Hello, everyone, and welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your time here with me today. And that few minutes comment might actually be really funny when we consider the topic of today's episode, which I have a little bit of hesitancy discussing because it kind of falls a little under what I refer to as online drama, maybe YouTube drama, but it does involve, it involves a famous anime voice actor, and I have done videos on this voice actor before, so it kind of makes sense that I would follow up on this. Now, for those of you who are not aware of who Vic Mignogna is, he is an anime voice actor, singer, producer who basically was accused of sexual misconduct. And as a result, he was let go from various companies. Now, he claimed his innocence, and in fact, he did something that I personally think you should do if you believe you are innocent. And he sued Funimation, his former employer, for, lost wages, letting him go under false pretense, tortious interference. I mean, he sued for a few things. And I already made an episode about the court case, which I will link to above. But the long and short of it is he filed this suit. It went to discovery, and it went to trial to the extent where the judge basically tossed out all the complaints, basically because not that he was innocent or guilty. He wasn't ruled guilty, keep in mind. Some people say, the judge ruled that he was a sexual predator, therefore no. What the judge threw the cases out was for lack of evidence and standing that he had to sue because as a public figure, you're open to scrutiny. And in my opinion, and I stated this in my other episode, I think he handled the lawsuit wrong. Just from a pragmatic standpoint, it's like, Funimation was responding to online criticism and articles that were being written. If there was something truly defamatory being said, you go after the people who wrote the articles and started the Twitter hashtags and things like that. But from pragmatically, that's what you do. I'm not saying I believe he's innocent. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, this is how it is. And for the record, he did come on my YouTube channel years ago. He was very friendly and polite. My experience with him has been largely positive, but I know that is not the case with other people. In fact, I have other friends who work in the anime industry that have had nothing but negative things to say about him. So whether he is guilty of what he was being accused of or not, I think it's clear that at the very least he was not a saint, as some people would like to claim he is. So look, I have to get all of that out of the way. This is a very touchy subject, but it leads us to today and this topic. One of the people, if not the person, who started the whole situation that got him let go was a YouTuber by the name of Marzgurl. Now, my history with Marzgurl is that when the whole change the channel thing was going on, if you don't know what that is, look it up on YouTube. Channel Awesome changed the channel. It was a thing. I actually got quite a few views on videos I made about that whole situation. She communicated with me. My interactions with her were pleasant. I guess I must have said something at some point where she did not like it because she blocked me. And I've got my own thoughts about blocking people on Twitter and things like that, but I'm going to keep it to myself because at the end of the day, it's really your business whether you decide to block someone or not. But my interactions with her were mostly positive. So I also have mutuals who have experience with her, and their experiences are much more mixed. But she was the one who really launched this campaign against him. It was, as far as I remember, I might be getting some of the details wrong, so if there are details I get wrong, feel free to leave them in the comments section if you are listening to this podcast at a place where there are comments available. But she basically brought up the fact that Vic Mignogna had been accused of sexual misconduct on the opening of Dragon Ball Super Broly in theaters. Like, hey, I don't want to rain on everyone's parade, but in light of these conversations, maybe it's time to rethink hiring Vic Mignogna for this reason. And then at one point she said, does this need like a hashtag or something like kick Vic? And look, credit due where credit's due. It was a catchy hashtag. I mean, that definitely has a ring to it. And sure enough, that started a firestorm, which had many people coming out sharing their stories, and it had the voice actors from Funimation sharing their stories about him. A couple of them that were especially vocal were Jamie Markey and Monica Rial, who had very, very uncomplimentary things to say about him. I think Sean Schimmel was also someone who was being vocal, but then you had some of the voice actors who were defending Vic. So it became a very online public spectacle. Now, my personal opinion of this is like, if I were Funimation, who was the company handling Dragon Ball Z at the time, they have since been bought and are now Crunchyroll, I would have simply let everyone go pending an investigation to find out who was right and who was wrong. Now, that's what I would have done. I don't know if that was ever considered, but Funimation did their own investigation, and without releasing details, they decided to let Vic Mignogna go, and that they would no longer be working with him, because technically they're independent contractors, they're not employees. Now, here's something I need to state right now. While it is disappointing that Funimation did not release the results of their investigation, that is their right to do so. You know, they can say this is an internal matter, we've investigated it, this is what we've concluded. It does not mean that they actually found some impropriety, believe it or not. It could mean that they simply had a meeting and said, well, what's our liability if we keep this guy, and decided to let him go without doing a serious investigation. Or they did do a serious investigation and they found misconduct. Either way, we kind of just have to accept that, and the fact that Funimation is under no legal or even moral obligation to let the fans know what they found. In fact, if their investigation showed that there was impropriety, but it was like, you know, hearsay, you couldn't like actually show evidence of it happening, then that really would have opened them up to a lawsuit, which I know ended up happening anyway. But, you know, there's reasons why these matters are kept internally. Them finding that there was impropriety or that they were going to sever his ties, it could have meant that, hey, we just don't want the liability, or it means that they found something serious. Either way, it was their choice to make, and, you know, you just kind of have to accept it regardless of what it is. Well, Vic Mignogna decided that he was going to file lawsuits for wrongful termination and tortious interference, and admittingly, there was at least one person he brought into the lawsuit that it would have been, he probably had the biggest shot against, you know, getting something out of, although which was Ron Toya, I think his name is, Monica Rial's boyfriend, who definitely seemed to be sending texts to conventions and encouraging them not to invite Vic to conventions because there was some stuff that was about to drop. That seems like tortious interference, but he's also not a Funimation employee as far as I'm concerned, so how would that be Funimation's fault? I don't know. This lawsuit was not handled well. Now, at the end of the day, the judge ruled against Mignogna because Mignogna did not exactly provide the proof that Funimation did what they did, and so it was dismissed with prejudice. And now Vic appealed this all the way up to the Texas Supreme Court, I believe, which that was just a waste of time. And now he's on the hook for like $250,000 in legal fees. And look, even if he was probably one of the better financially well-off voice actors, that's not exactly nothing. So he definitely got hurt in this situation. And I'm not saying he didn't deserve to be. I'm not saying he's right. I have to stress, I'm not taking a side. I am just pointing out the facts as they are. He sued, he lost. If it were me, I would have personally sued Anime News Network, Vulture, and yes, maybe even Marzgurl, because that's where the source of the rumors came from. And if that went to trial and he could prove that they were not being honest in their reporting, then, well, he probably wouldn't have even had to go after Funimation at that point, because Funimation probably would have given him his job back to avoid going to court. But he went after Funimation, who I think had every right to react the way they did, considering what was going on. And it's just one of those weird things, like, and again, I'm not saying I'm in his corner. I mean, sorry, Marzgurl. I mean, pragmatically, that's what I would have done. But that whole lawsuit was even like a problem. It was like his lawyer going on another lawyer's live streams and talking about the case, where it's like, if I had a lawyer and I hired them to write a case, it's like, you know what? No. Don't be going on podcasts and things like that talking about this case. You work on the case. Like, I think the situation was messy. Well, anyway, this was about 6 years ago. Now, it kind of came to an end, I think, as recently as last year, when it finally was settled. Like, he can't appeal anymore. He owes this money, everything like that. So even though this is like a 6-year-old thing that happened, it's been talked about quite frequently. And someone who has been pretty vocal about everything that's happening is Marzgurl. Because here's the thing, she did start the hashtag, and she has shouldered a lot of criticism. And, dare I say it, outright harassment at times. And look, here's the thing. I'm going to get this out of the way before I, start defending her, because, again, everyone gets their day in court on iCritic Live. When you do something like this, you have to be open to the possibility that you are going to make people upset, and that they are not going to react well, and that they might come after you. Now, I'm not saying that's right. In fact, that's very not right. But, all that being said, this is why people are afraid to come forward in the first place, because especially if someone is big enough and has their fans, then it creates a conflict in the sense that you might get drawn into a harassment campaign. And I'm not saying it's right, but here's the thing. When you begin a campaign to get someone fired, and you should expect that those fans are going to come back, and complain about you as well. Personally, I'm okay with people making videos about her, debating her ideas and things like that. I do not agree with people calling her names. I do not agree with people sending her death threats. In fact, here's the thing, folks, a little bit of wisdom. If you are going to disagree with someone, like I'm going to kind of about to in a moment, you be above what you despise. You think this person is doing this, you know what? You stand above it. You think this person is being abusive, you stand above it. You do not stoop to their level. And I'm not saying that was her level. I'm just saying in theory, when you disagree with someone, you hold the higher ground. It's going to look so much better for you in the long run. But that being said, even though I'm okay with that, many of the YouTubers were mean. Many of the fans sent her death threats, comments. And here's the thing, if I were her personally, and again, I'm not her, so maybe this is not her thinking, but if I were her, and I've had to deal with a cyberbully, as hard as it is, I would just ignore them. I mean, that's what the block button is for. That's why I assume she was using it. But from my observations, she did seem to, it didn't seem like she was opposed to talking to people about this situation. She just didn't want to talk to people who disagreed with her. And look, a lot of those people were not having good faith arguments. I think in some instances she wasn't having a good faith argument either, but that's besides the point. When you have people who feel very strongly about something and passionately on the opposite sides, well, then you have conflict. Now, she announced I believe it was last Friday or something, that she would be, or it was a week ago, I don't know when this was, but she announced that she was going to finally be releasing her truth. And I say her truth because you know how I feel about truth. It's not that people shouldn't share their truth, but your truth is very subjective. It's like what you believe to be true, but it doesn't mean it's what is actually true. But she's releasing her truth. She is allowed to do that, by the way, and you are allowed to agree or disagree with that truth if the facts that you have are different than the facts she has. But she was going to release a video about the Vic Mignogna situation, the whole kit and caboodle. And it premiered, I believe, on the 17th, and it is 11 hours, 5 minutes, and 38 seconds. And yes, there are chapter marks. Now, okay, first things first. I personally would have released it as a video series, multiple videos, but okay, you want to do 11 hours? That's fine. Like, I don't know who has time to watch, and for the record, I haven't watched it either. I probably will, in a few sittings, of course, but I probably will. And, you know, but I wanted to record this before I watched it, because I wanted to get my unfiltered thoughts out before I watched this. And I might even do a follow-up episode about what I thought about the video. Now, the trailer suggests that it's going to hold no punches. It is going to be her personal vendetta against Vic Mignogna. And again, she has every right to do this. Now, if it is defamatory, then maybe there's a lawsuit in the future. I don't know. I kind of hope not. I hope Vic has to be tired of legal stuff and that he just lets this go. I think the damage is done at this point. And even if he feels that what happened was unfair, and I'm not saying it was unfair, the thing is, it's done. He seems to be moving on, doing other things. Probably best to just let sleeping dogs lie. But she has released an 11-hour video. And this, of course, got a lot of people talking. The people who are against Vic going like, yeah, I can't wait to watch the whole story. Then there are people who are in favor of Vic, like, you know, the I Stand With Vic crowd, as they were called. And they're like, oh, look at her. She's just seeking attention again. And, of course, my opinion is a little bit more nuanced than most. Now, the first thing I should mention is that I do, to an extent, believe that this is for attention. Her claim is that this is going to be the last she's ever going to speak about Vic Mignogna. And I would be okay if that was the case, because here's the thing, just for her, it cannot be healthy to be obsessing about this man for 6 years, to dealing with his fans, to have him living in your head rent-free. Maybe this is something you have to do to just kind of get it all out there and move on. That's fine. However, by releasing it, you know you're going to be shaking the hornet's nest again. And people are going to be doing videos about it. They might even be doing like these long reaction videos, and they're going to get their content now because you've given them a gold mine of content. So you may feel like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this is going to be the final word, and then I'm never going to say anything about it again. But if the idea behind this was that, hey, I'm going to say my piece and I'm never going to say anything again, and then people just need to get off my back, that's not going to happen. They're going to dissect this documentary. They're going to hunt down the clips that you use, and if they've been edited in any way, which I'm sure they have to be edited in a certain way. Again, I haven't watched it, we'll see. But if they're edited in a way that makes Vic maybe look worse than he did before, they're going to use the original clips, and they're going to call you out, and this is going to start all over again. So unless you want to have this thing start all over again, I would not have done this. Now, one of the things that is suggesting that maybe this is not all about fame and attention, this is a fundraiser video. So all the proceeds from this video will go to charity. I don't know exactly. It's going to rain. Support survivors of sexual assault and abuse. So that's, if I am looking at this correctly, this fundraiser button means that everything's going to go to rain. Or, and this is, I'm putting this in there just in case that's not what this means, because there's also a donate button. So maybe she gets to keep the video revenue, but you can donate. I don't know. If that's the case, then yeah, some people are going to argue that, hey, she hasn't had a hit video in a long time. She hasn't been relevant outside of this situation, and changed the channel, which is like way too old now to matter. Like, so she's doing this to basically make herself popular again. I'm not saying that's what's happening. Just saying, if she is collecting the video money, then there might be a case for that. But as I see it now, it looks like it's going to be a fundraiser. So I'm just pointing that out. But I think that if she truly wanted to move on from this, if she really wanted to, not talk about this anymore, if she did not want to be involved with this man anymore, you know what? If he really is that terrible, then why wouldn't you want to not deal with him anymore? Like, it almost has to be like you move on. But she did this video. I think that's going to have the exact opposite effect. I don't know if, like, that's the goal either. I mean, sometimes people, they get famous for very dubious things, and then they just run that gravy train till they can't run it anymore. I remember, and this is a name that's not going to ring a lot of bells to people, Cindy Sheehan, who went like on a hunger strike for because her son died in the Iraq War, and she was protesting against George W. Bush, which, again, her right to do. But she became particularly famous for doing that, and then she just started making more and more wild claims. Her husband divorced her because she had kind of gone insane in his opinion, and she eventually ended up running for vice president with Roseanne Barr. Like, very, very weird situation, but she never pivoted that fame into something more substantial, if you know what I mean. So that happens sometimes, and look, I don't want to act like Marzgurl is a one-hit wonder. She was on Channel Awesome. I personally like her Land Before Time videos, but this seems like a very strange situation to be jumping back into when the dialogue, from my perspective, has largely gone away. I mean, I don't see the posts really anymore about him or what's going on, because there's nothing to talk about anymore. There isn't. It's like, it's done. He lost the lawsuit. Not everyone has to be happy about that. A lot of people can be happy about that. And I think we're all just moving on. He's not going to be in the anime industry any longer. And the reason he won't isn't for the reasons you think. Actually, and this might have been the main reason he probably shouldn't have sued, is that basically he's become unhireable. I talked to a CEO of one of these anime companies. They'll be remaining nameless, of course. But they told me that basically he is unhireable because he sued an employee. And once you sue an employee, that's it. There's no coming back. This person believed that Vic had basically kept his head down, eventually it would have blown over and he would have been hired again. I am not as confident about that, but yeah, employers don't like to be sued. That's why I believe many of them actually ask if you're disabled. Yes, they might want to see if there are accommodations that need to be made, but it's also an indicator whether or not they're going to be hiring a walking lawsuit or not. So there you have it. But for something that was like so dead and gone, for her to now like release this massive thing and really stir the hornet's nest again, I'm sorry, I don't. Here's what I'm going to say. If she is sincere that she wanted this to go away, this was absolutely the wrong way to do it. This was the wrong way to do it. Should not have done it this way. She needed to just, frankly, stop responding to the comments. Stop responding to the comments. And look, even if I believe her when she says, I keep getting all of these comments, and so I did this to, it's not going to work. And she's been on the internet long enough where I feel like she knows it's not going to work. And so there is a part of this where I do wonder, is this a publicity stunt? And by the way, Marzgurl, if you want, you can come onto the podcast and we can talk about this. I don't want you to think that I'm against you. I'm just being pragmatic about this. I just don't think that if you want this to go away, this is the way you do it. In fact, I would argue, but again, I'm not her, so I don't see things from her point of view. But from my perspective, the world had kind of started to move on. Yes, you still have some people who were still clinging on to this, but those were the sad people. The one it's like, okay, look, it's like, this was 6 years ago. Really, in 4 years, it's going to be a decade that this will have happened. Like, it's kind of amazing how fast time has gone by. If you're still worried about this, then you've definitely got a problem, and you're not worth conversing with. But at the same time, Marzgurl, you really wanted to move on from this. You really wanted to not have to talk about this man anymore. You did the one thing you shouldn't have done. And that is that's going to be a huge problem for you if you really wanted this to go away. And I'm not going to make any judgments. I mean, it does seem on the surface that I think you did want a hit video again, but I don't know that for sure. It could just as easily be that you want this thing to go away. But again, considering what this was going to do, I have to kind of go with my original theory. Now, again, I have not watched it yet. I'm going to. In fact, I might even start when I, get into the editing process of this. But, yeah, this is just drawing attention to something that I think should have been put to rest a long time ago. I say that these disputes should always go to court and let the law decide what's going to happen. Well, it went to court. The law did not decide that Vic was guilty of sexual misconduct, only that he had no case to bring. Maybe no one's completely happy with that result. I mean, the people who wanted to see justice done to him for the victims. And by the way, the victims are totally allowed to bring him to court. That's one of the reasons why I'm always been a little shaky. Like, well, look, if these people were really victims, where are the police reports? Where's the lawsuits? Like, I just wonder about that. But look, they can sue him. But his victims did not get the justice they wanted, and the people who liked Vic did not get the justice they wanted. Basically, the whole thing ended in a stalemate with Vic losing his job. So I guess technically the people against him got out a little bit more, but now he's pivoted to live action stuff, and he does his daily victory Bible musings, and I think he's gotten into a little bit of live streaming and stuff. So I mean, he's found ways to stick around. He's just not in the anime industry anymore. And I'm kind of the opinion, look, unless something personally happened to me, I am not going to obsess about it too much. Now, I will say one thing just before anyone says, well, how do you know something didn't happen to Marzgurl? There is a chapter in her video that's called My Story. And I am very much looking forward to watching at least that section, because I am curious what about this man made her so obsessed about taking him down. Maybe she has a very powerful story, and it's I'll totally understand why she's in the position that she's in. I'm glad that that's there, and that's the section I'm looking forward to watching the most. In the meantime, the general message of this podcast is, if there's a conflict that you want to go away, well, you have to just simply let it go, stop talking about it, move on as best you can. And it's just not healthy to have people living in your head rent free. It's just not a healthy thing to do. And forgiveness can also go a long way. Forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. So that's my personal opinion on that, but I know this is like a loaded topic. I'm going to get some wild comments below. Please be respectful, everyone. And look, if this is your first time here and you like what you hear, we don't talk about drama a lot, but we do talk about like movies and entertainment and pop culture and sometimes life events that intermingle, like this one. So if you like what you hear, consider making it official and subscribing to us. We are on Spotify, Apple, Deezer, and all your podcasting platforms of choice. I am also on YouTube on iCritic Media. And of course, you can read my print reviews and editorials at www.icritic.net. In the meantime, take care of each other, and I'll see you at the movies. Take care. Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters. And I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running. And of course, is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to. It is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.